Good day, Crime Talk aficionados. First, more out-of-state witnesses identified in the Bryan Kohberger matter. Dark revelations for the FOB, that's right, a friend of Barry. The military-trained dad accused of killing his 3 daughters. That search goes for this 3rd week. An Ohio teacher couldn't be more happy to get to prison. We have This Day in Legal History. Our legal quote of the day is in regards to what excites the prurient interest. Sounds salacious, doesn't it? And finally, our dumb criminal of the day. Let's talk about it.
All right, lawyer.
Good day, Crime Talk aficionados. My name is Scott Reich, and this is Crime Talk. Thanks for joining us. You know the drill. Subscribe if you haven't, like if you do. Leave me a comment below and hit that little bell for notifications. And yes, you can check us out on any of your favorite podcasting apps. Now, before we get to the docket, I need to remind you to go to crimetalksearch.com, sign up for that background subscription service today, and you'll be able to check out somebody maybe it's coming new to your life. All right? Let's say, for example, hypothetically, you start dating a guy whose wife disappeared, right? You don't know that maybe, or maybe you do, doesn't really matter. Guess what? Either you or your family members are going to do that background search. It might as well be you, ladies and gentlemen. And when you go to crimetalksearch.com, you're going to get that background search prepared and emailed to you while you wait. And you're going to get all kinds of information as it relates to, do they own property? Are they married? Are they divorced? Do they have criminal charges? Have criminal charges been dismissed against them, maybe for a serious allegation? All those types of things. Are they on one of those sex offender registries, right? Could their DNA be traced to, I don't know, the missing person's car, perhaps? Those are the things you want to know. Go to crimetalksearch.com. You're going to be happy that you did. All right, everybody. So let's get to it. It is Tuesday, June 24th, 2025. And guess what? Yeah, before we get started, there's still stuff going on there. Karen Reed, obviously, Mr. Brennan put out his response yesterday of saying that he's disappointed and he hopes that basically everybody can go about their way and don't intimidate the witnesses. Then, of course, Alan Jackson said that basically Mr. Brennan was an unscrupulous prosecutor and the whole system is broken there in Massachusetts. Well, all right, I think that just about covers it. The jury has spoken. Doesn't really matter what happens from here on out because nothing is going to happen further to anybody as it relates to that particular event, right? Nobody else is going to be charged. No one else is going to be looked at. It's done. It's over. So both sides, everybody just needs to move on just like it will in the criminal justice system because it's over. The jury has spoken. All right, let's go ahead and get to the docket today officially here. First on the docket, Bryan Kohberger. More out-of-state witnesses in the Bryan Kohberger matter have been identified. Now, the necessity of out-of-state witnesses for Bryan Kohberger's trial in the University of Idaho student murders case underscores their critical role in ensuring a fair and comprehensive judicial process, right? Well, 2 additional Pennsylvania residents, William Searfoss and Anthony Soma, have been summoned to testify, joining 5 other Pennsylvanians required to attend a hearing to determine whether they must travel to Idaho for the trial, which is obviously set to begin in August, assuming the judge does not grant the defense's continuance request. Now, Searfoss, a correctional officer at the Monroe County Correctional Facility, well, he was there when Bryan Kohberger was detained following his arrest back in December of 2022. And Soma, whose connection to Kohberger remains somewhat unclear, are among those whose testimony is deemed essential. Now, Searfoss, who may provide insight into Kohberger's behavior or interactions during his detention, is apparently vital to both the prosecution and the defense to present a complete picture of the case. Other Pennsylvania witnesses, such as Kohberger's former boxing coach, a school advisor, and a professor who recommended him for the PhD program, are expected to testify in regards to his character, academic background, and prior conduct. Now, that would be more for the sentencing phase if it gets there. Obviously, he's entitled to the presumption of innocence. Now, those witnesses' perspective could be crucial for contextualizing Kohberger's actions and state of mind, which obviously could influence potentially the trial outcome as it relates to whether guilty or not guilty. And obviously, if it gets to the sentencing stage, whether Mr. Kohberger is sentenced to death or he is given a life without the possibility of parole sentence. Now, compelling these witnesses to travel across the country highlights the court's recognition that their firsthand knowledge is indispensable for thoroughly examining the evidence. For instance, the prosecution intends to use Kohberger's academic work from DeSalle University to demonstrate his familiarity with crime scene handling. At the same time, the defense may rely on these witnesses to support their narrative. The necessity of their presence in Idaho ensures that the trial addresses all relevant aspects of Kohberger's past, which is essential for delivering justice in these high-stakes cases involving 4 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of burglary. Now, you may say, gee, why do you have to bring somebody into court in Pennsylvania to go to court in Idaho? Well, remember, the court in Idaho has no jurisdiction over somebody in Pennsylvania. That subpoena is not worth the piece of paper it's written on. So you have to basically go through this process. There's an act, it's like the Interstate Rendition Act, and you have to basically go to the prosecutor or local attorney, get the matter set, serve the witnesses, set a hearing date, and then the judge in Pennsylvania will order those witnesses to cooperate and appear at the time scheduled. And obviously the state of Idaho or the defense, whomever is bringing them, will have to pay for their travel expenses and everything related to their time in Idaho. But that's necessary because, like I said, if I were to issue a subpoena, it is not worth a piece of paper it is written on to, let's say, a California corporation. They're going to say, well, you didn't comply with this act, and under California, you don't have to do that. So you have to get basically a judge to sign off on it and say, I'm ordering you. This is important. Now go to a judge in California to do it. It's a pain in the butt, but that's the thing, is that we are separate states, and I shouldn't be subjected to criminal actions in, let's say, I don't know, Alabama if I've never been there, and nobody can certainly make me go there as a witness unless I voluntarily did that. Now, none of these witnesses are apparently volunteering and saying, give me a waiver of service and I'll sign it and I'll promise to get on that airplane. We'll see. That hearing's obviously coming up in the next couple of days. The judge will order them to appear. Not a big deal. The biggest thing is going to be, are we starting on time in the Kohberger matter, which I believe it is. I don't believe Judge Hippler is going to grant a continuance based upon his statements at the last hearing just a couple of weeks ago, which would also mean that the third-party suspect, third-party perpetrator, probably not going to be allowed to be introduced by the defense. Doesn't really matter. Obviously, the defense still has to be able to cross-examine these witnesses, and they can still say, hey, in the course of your investigation, you collected some other DNA, didn't you? Whether they go into testing or not, still throws it out there that it goes to the weight of the investigation. The jury can decide what weight to give it. Frankly, I think that's a better strategy than trying to go with a third-party suspect, unless you can actually prove, i.e., via a confession, that somebody else committed the crime. All right, next on the docket, dark revelations. So Shoshona Dark, or Darky, I think it was pronounced Darky last time we encountered this woman after Barry Morphew was being released from custody the last time, or the case was dismissed. Anyway, she is a 55-year-old woman residing in Durango, Colorado. And she has spoken about her 4-year relationship in regards to Barry Morphew. Obviously, the man now accused again of killing his wife, Suzanne Morphew, and is charged with first-degree murder. Now, Suzanne disappeared back on Mother's Day in 2020. Now, Miss Darky gave an interview to the Daily Mail and expressed her turmoil following Morphew's recent arrest in Cave Creek, Arizona on June 20th. She said, quote, "This is my worst fear coming true, that he could be responsible," end quote. And apparently when she was giving that response, she became visibly emotional. Ms. Darky met Morphew back in October of 2020, just 5 months after Suzanne's disappearance from their home in Colorado. She described him as being kind and loving, but admitted to some troubling dynamics in their relationship, which ended last year. Now, there wasn't physical abuse, according to her, but there's other kinds of abuse she noted. She described Morphew as a very broken man. Their relationship, which included living together in a rental near the Morphew's $1.62 million home, faced public scrutiny and accusations that she contributed to the Morphew's marital breakdown. Now, Suzanne Morphew was reported missing on Mother's Day back in 2020 after her daughters, Mallory and Macy, could not reach her on the phone. And Morphew claimed Suzanne planned to go biking while he was away for work, just here in Broomfield, Colorado, which is literally about a 5-minute drive from the CrimeTalk studios. Now, her bike and helmet were found in separate locations near their home, but her remains were not discovered until 2023 in a remote area called the Boneyard, about an hour south of Maysville, during a search for another missing woman. Now, an autopsy revealed that the presence of a powerful animal tranquilizer known as BAM was in her system. Notably, the grand jury indictment revealed that Morphew was the only private citizen in the area with access to BAM, which he used for deer hunting in Indiana before moving to Colorado in 2018. Now, police also found a tranquilizer gun, darts, and a needle cap in the Morphew's home. Now, the indictment further disclosed that Suzanne's remains showed signs of being moved, with her clothing torn and possibly swapped post-mortem, suggesting her body was buried, exhumed, and then relocated. These findings have intensified suspicions against Morphew, who was previously charged with her murder in 2021. That case was dismissed in 2022 due to the absence of Suzanne Morphew's body and, let's remember, prosecutorial misconduct, where the district attorney in that case that was handling it ultimately got disbarred. I have the opinion imposing sanctions against her right here. And if it wasn't 81 pages long, I would read it to you. Who knows? Maybe I will one day. Maybe it'd make a great podcast series, wouldn't it? Anyway, the previous case had a troubled history. We'll see if it gets better this time. Now, the former girlfriend of Morphew has managed rental properties and never met Suzanne Morphew, and recalled waving to her at most on Puma Path, the street where the Morphews lived. Now, she met Morphew through a mutual friend and was apparently drawn to him, empathizing with his apparent grief. However, their relationship apparently was fraught with challenges, including a 2021 misdemeanor trespassing charge against Darky for removing a package from Morphew's former home that was caught on video footage. The charge was dropped, but the incident combined with the public harassment apparently strained Darky's life. The bullying was constant, she said. Really ugly, horrible stuff. Now, despite dismissing early evidence against Morphew as circumstantial, Darky grew uneasy as the new details emerged, particularly the BAM discovery. Now, she moved to Durango in 2024 as their relationship deteriorated, last seen Morphew in Arizona. Now working with a therapist to process dynamics of control and narcissism, Darky is grappling with her perception of Morphew. She said, "I'm still trying to figure out who he was, if not the person I thought." Anyway, Morphew's daughters, Mallory and Macy, now in their 20s, have consistently supported their father, with Darky noting that they likely still believe in his innocence. They're two beautiful young ladies, very supportive of their father, she said, describing Morphew as a devoted dad. However, Darky emphasized the difference between his parental and romantic relationships. Now remember, Mr. Morphew is currently held on a $3 million cash-only bond, and he awaits extradition to the state of Colorado. We'll let you know when he arrives. Anyway, Darky plans to follow the case from a distance, seeking the truth while maintaining contact with his daughters. "My heart is broken," she said, reflecting on the grief for Mallory and Macy as they navigate their father's arrest. Telling you, that's like a great segue for CrimeTalkSearch.com. Do you know who you're sleeping with? Who's sleeping next to you right there, right? I mean, she knew that he had this case, but how do you know until you don't know, right? You don't know what you don't know. Kind of weird, creepy. But obviously now she's got some doubt that maybe he is not the great guy that she originally thought that he was. I don't know. He's entitled to the presumption of innocence. The prosecution completely bungled the case the first time through. Now, don't get me wrong. He had very, very good attorneys, Iris Eitan and Drew Nielsen. And he's hired good attorneys on this time around as well. And his attorneys have said, same evidence, same outcome. We'll see if that is going to be the case. Next, Travis Decker. The search goes on for now going into its third week, and the police, want to use cadaver dogs. So the Washington state father wanted for allegedly killing his 3 daughters may no longer be alive in the remote wilderness, according to police. Now, Travis Decker is accused of murdering his 3 daughters, wait for it, Paitlin, 9, Evelyn, 8, and Olivia, 5, after their bodies were found near Decker's abandoned vehicle in a remote campground. Now, in a statement released Monday evening, the sheriff's office revealed there is no certain evidence that Decker remains alive or that he's even in this area, but insisted authorities are continuing the search for the father throughout the Teenaway Valley, Liberty, Lauderdale, and Blewett Pass. Anyway, Travis Decker is accused of murdering his 3 daughters before disappearing into the Washington wilderness. Seemingly, strong early leads gave way to less convincing proofs over the last 2 weeks of searching, the police said, and still we can't and we won't quit this search. Now, police also noted that they are set to deploy a cadaver dog this week. So, Mr. Travis Decker, if you're still out there, you should probably do the honorable thing. Turn yourself in for the alleged deaths of your 3 young, beautiful daughters. Or you could continue to run, or maybe die in the wilderness, maybe eaten by a bear. Maybe that's the reasonable thing to do. Who knows? But if they find him, we'll let you know about it. Next, an Ohio teacher could not be more happy to be in prison. Well, look who's grinning ear to ear in her new home, sweet home. None other than Emily Nutley, the former Ohio teacher who traded chalkboards for cell blocks. Yeah, snapped in her mugshot at the Ohio Reformatory for Women in Marysville. That's right. Emily is sporting a smile so wide you think she just won the lottery. Not a 3-year all-inclusive stay in prison. Now you might be wondering why she's so darn chipper behind bars. Could it be the state-of-the-art prison amenities, the chance of catching up on some reading? Or perhaps Emily's just thrilled to have a break from grading papers after her scandalous escapades at the St. Xavier High School in Cincinnati. After all, this is the woman who turned her office into a den of iniquity, engaging in sexual battery with a 17-year-old student back in 2023. That's right, oral sex, intercourse, racy texts, and nude selfies. She was a one-woman rogue gallery of bad decisions. And even when the teen tried to hit the brakes, Emily kept revving the engine, refusing to let go until rumors of her misdeeds reached the school principal. Cue the police, a guilty plea in April, and her grand prison entrance. Compare this to her first booking photo at the Hamilton County Jail in 2024, where she looked like she'd bitten into a lemon, pursed lips and all. So what's changed? Maybe she's just embracing the minimalist lifestyle, no lesson plan, no parent-teacher conferences, just her bunk and that megawatt smile. Who knew prison could be such a mood lifter? Well, Emily Nutley, that's who. Sheriff's wife is arrested in connection with an alleged gambling operation. That's right. Robin Severance Lopez, the estranged wife of Osceola County Sheriff Marcos Lopez, was arrested on Monday by Homeland Security investigators on state charges of conspiracy to commit racketeering, according to Homeland Security Tampa. Her arrest follows that of her husband, who is charged with felony racketeering for his alleged involvement in an extensive illegal gambling operation in the vicinity of Walt Disney World. Now, prosecutors allege that Sheriff Lopez facilitated the gambling operation in exchange for personal campaign payments and contributions. Now, the operation, which involved 4 additional defendants, reportedly operated a slot machine, a lottery, and a gambling establishment under the guise of Fusion Social Club in Kissimmee, Florida. Obviously a tourist-heavy area. Police estimate that the organization generated about, roughly, give or take $1 or $2, $21.6 million. Yeah, that's right, $21.6 million. Not bad for the sheriff's side hustle, right? Anyway, details regarding Severance Lopez's specific role in the alleged scheme have not been disclosed by police. And following the sheriff's arrest, Governor Ron DeSantis issued an executive order suspending him from office and appointing a Florida Highway Patrol official as the interim sheriff. Now, the Florida Department of Law Enforcement Commissioner Mark Glass stated, quote, "Law enforcement officials are held to elevated standards of integrity and character. This case demonstrates that Sheriff Lopez breached the trust and ethical expectations associated with his position as the Osceola County elected sheriff," end quote. Needless to say, his city manager was a little disappointed as well. And of course, he put out his little obligatory statement, but you know what it is. And let's not forget, in a separate incident, Sheriff Lopez pled no contest in December to violating state records law after posting an image online of the body of a 13-year-old Madeline Soto. He was fined $250. Now, the boyfriend of Soto's mother has been charged in connection with her death. Next, this day in legal history, June 24th, 1957, United States Supreme Court rules Roth v. United States. Court ruled that obscene publications are not protected by the First Amendment. Makes sense, right? Obscenity, right? You know. Well, we'll deal with that in just a minute. Then, June 24th, 1969, Stanley v. Georgia, SCOTUS unanimously upheld, the Supreme Court of the United States, unanimously upheld possession of obscene materials is protected by the First Amendment. Go figure. Just when you thought you knew what you were talking about, they changed the rules on you, right? Then on June 24th, 1980, President Jimmy Carter signed an act reviving draft registration, reinforcing the legal mechanism for the military conscription, and influencing later selective service violation cases. You know, the draft. I think everybody still has to do that when they turn 18. No one's ever been drafted since, the early 70s. But, you know, if the big one ever came around, they'd have to know where to come get you to go serve. You know, and I've jokingly said it wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing if we sent every 18-year-old off to boot camp, maybe for at least, a year or two. But that's just me, because I was a young 18-year-old kid and completely changed my life. Changed everything. Instilled some discipline in me. Not necessarily a bad thing, but I don't think America's has the stomach for that today. And next, on June 24th, 2004, the New York's highest court declared that the state's death penalty law was unconstitutional, halting executions and sparking once again a national debate on capital punishment. I think it's clear to say, obviously, the states can have the death penalty if they choose to do so or not. But the feds, I don't think, will ever get rid of it, particularly since, it's treason is punishable by death, for goodness sakes. How else are you going to imprison them for something? No, you got to have it. Then on June 24th, 2020, the federal courts issued emergency orders for prisoners released due to COVID-19, sparking legal battles over public safety versus inmates' rights, reshaping prison policy. I remember that madness. Everybody in custody wanted a humanitarian, compassionate release from federal prison because of COVID. They let everybody out of the local jails, but feds were a little more picky, so to speak. And now when those humanitarian, compassionate release motions come through, they are promptly denied. Next, our quote of the day. Well, it has to deal with obscenity. Today's kind of a big day for obscenity. So here's a quote. A significant legal quote regarding obscenity in the United States comes from Miller v. California, a 1973 Supreme Court case where they established the three-pronged test for determining obscenity. The court outlined that materials is obscene if, one, the average person applying the contemporary community standards would find that the work, taken as a whole, appeals to the prurient interests. The word depicts or describes in a potentially offensive way sexual conduct specifically defined by the applicable state law, and the work, taken as a whole, lacks serious literary, artistic, political, or scientific value. Now, most of that makes everything, there's no obscenity much anymore. That's about it. There's some artistic value there on just about anything. Next, how about the old phrase, you can't define pornography, but you know it when you see it? Well, this stems from Justice Potter Stewart's concurrence in Jacobellis versus Ohio back in 1964, where he addressed the difficulty of defining obscenity. He stated, quote, "I shall not attempt to further define the kinds of material I understand to be embraced within the shorthand description, and perhaps I could never succeed in intelligently doing so. But I know it when I see it, and the motion picture involved in this case is not that. Anyway, Justice Stewart's remarks reflect the subjective challenges of identifying obscenity through the Miller test. Later provides a little more framework, but let's face it, basically obscenity laws are done here today. And next on the docket, our dumb criminal of the day. Carolyn's hair-raising heist. Ladies and gentlemen, gather around for the tale of Carolyn Deborah Harmelin, our dumb criminal of the day. At the spry age of a young 72, this former New Yorker decided to make waves, not with a stunning new hairdo, but with a spectacularly foolish caper at the Tenna Salon Institute in the Villages. Now, on March 20th, Carolyn sauntered into the salon for what would have been a routine snip and style. 30 minutes into the stylist's chair, and things took a turn for the dramatic. Our protagonist turned argumentative, transforming a simple haircut into a full-blown showdown. And when the salon director politely informed her that her fabulous new do would cost a whopping $56, Carolyn's response was less cash or card and more catch me outside. With the grace of a soap opera villain, she stormed to the parking lot, hopped into her blue Toyota Avalon, and peeled out, leaving the salon staff with nothing but snapshots of her license plate and a story to tell. Clearly, Carolyn thought she'd pulled over the heist of the century. Spoiler alert, no she didn't. A detective armed with the license plate photo and salon surveillance footage quickly confirmed that Carolyn was the mastermind behind the follicular felony. A warrant was issued, and on Wednesday, her brief taste of freedom ended with a trip to the Sumter County Detention Center. She posted a measly $150 bond and waltzed out, but not before cementing her place in the Hall of Infamy. Now, let's not pretend this is Carolyn's first rodeo. The Osceola alum had a rap sheet spicier than a tabloid headline, including a 2017 tussle where she allegedly sent her own mother to the ground in a domestic dispute. And to that, a cocktail of prior arrests for violating court orders, DUI, and driving with a suspended license, and you got a renegade on your hands here, ladies and gentlemen. Currently shacked up at the Lake Sumner Apartments, Carolyn's latest stunt proves that age is just a number. But wisdom, that's apparently optional. Stay tuned for her next episode on how not to adult. We're betting it's going to be a doozy. Can't make this stuff up, ladies and gentlemen. All right, that's all we have for today. Hope you enjoyed the show. See you next time. And remember, the Constitution matters.